Hi friends, welcome back to Brewing Thought. In this playlist, we are making videos on how to use Azure Logicapps to integrate with Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. In this video, we will look at how to use recurring API patterns to export a data package from Finance and Operations using Azure Logicapps. Now, as I have mentioned in my previous videos, that my intention to make these videos is to model the calls from Logicapps to FNO and not really talking about the best practices or performance enhancement scenarios in Logicapps. So these videos will help you to get the bare bones of your Logicapps in place when you are using it for integration. But I recommend to use the best practices and connect with your integration experts when doing it in any production environment. So let's start and we will see how we can export the data using recurring integration. So I'm sharing a link where Microsoft has explained the framework of recurring integration APIs. I won't be going too deep into it, so I recommend reading this page and understand the way it works. Uh, Basically, on a very high level, it uses NQ and DQ mechanisms to exchange files with the external systems, which basically means is that the external applications are interacting with these APIs to talk to Dynamics, and Dynamics data management platform is exporting and importing files from a blob storage, which comes as a part of the Azure, which comes as the part of your finance and operations subscription. Now, in these APIs, you will notice that there is a particular uh, ID, which is the activity ID when we are queuing the files in for import scenarios, and for export scenarios, when we dequeue, we need an activity ID. So how to get this activity ID? So what we have done is I have configured a data management export project, which we also used in our previous videos. Now, to use this for recurring integrations, what we have to do is we have to go to the manage options and go to manage recurring data jobs. Here we have to create a new record, give it a name, and define the application ID which we are using in our Logic apps to configure and authenticate. Now, after this, we have to enable the recurrence job. And what we have to do is basically set the recurrence where we tell for how many, at what frequency the files needs to be exported or imported. And similarly, we can set up the monitoring recurrence. So these are the concepts in finance and operations. And what we can do is we go to manage messages, and here we can see what messages have been exported or imported and what is their status. So these different statuses are explained in this docs page. Now, what I have done is I have actually at the moment stopped the recurring job because we already have around couple of files which are already exported, which we can try to read from our Logic apps. If I turn it on, it starts pushing the files out again. So this is the setup in finance and operation side. Now, the way to export the file is we have to first call a DQ API with the name of the activity ID. And then what we have to do is in the response, we get the location of the zip file, and then we download it and we have to acknowledge it back. Now, the reason why we need to acknowledge back is explained in this page. So I would recommend you to go through it. So let's look at the APIs for exporting. So API for exporting is called the DQ API. And the syntax is that after the base URL, we have to add API connector DQ and pass the activity ID. So in our Logic Apps Designer, what I have done is I've started by initializing few variables. If you want to see how we can do this, please have a look at my first OData video where we have used this type of variable initialization so that we don't have to assign or copy paste the complete values again and again. So the first thing we need to do is we need to call an HTTP post method, sorry, HTTP get method to initiate the file export. So what we do is we will go to Logic App Designer, click on a new step, and we will use HTTP action, and let's rename it to DQ. And here we will use the get method. In the URL, we have the base URL of our application, followed by the DQ command. And after DQ, we have to give the activity ID. So activity ID is basically this ID, which you can get from finance and operations. So we copy the activity ID and we paste it. Now, in the body, we don't have to give anything, but we need to give our authorization. Uh, so we will add the authentication parameters using OAuth. Now, in real world, basically, you can secure all these sensitive information using an Azure Key Vault and access the keyword from Logic App to extract the values. I'm just using keeping it simple for the sake of this demonstration. So I have called the DQ, and let's run this to see how it looks. Because what we want to do is the response from the DQ API will basically give us the location from where we can download the package. So let's run this. Now, when we run, we will also see that in finance and operations, the this particular instance has been now changed to DQ. It happened pretty fast here, so we can have a look that yes, we called the method get with that particular activity ID, and the response is this. So now if you look at the response, in the response, we have got the download location. Now this URL will be used to download the file. Now, because the response has multiple values, we need to extract the download location. So what we will do is we'll go back to our designer and we will parse this response to extract the location. So we go to data operations and we select parse JSON, and we use a sample payload to generate the schema. So we have been doing this thing in our previous logic apps as well, because this is how you can extract the information from the response. The content we want is the body of the DQ. And what we want to basically do is we initialize a new variable here, which we say as download location. Variable download location, which is a type string, and this value here we will be able to assign from the parse JSON. So now we have got the download location. So once we have got the download location, what we have to do is we have to do another call to download the file. And this is again a get call. Here we can see that the response we had from the previous call was having the complete URL from where we can download the file. So let's add a new step, HTTP. We will do a get call, and let's rename this to download the file. So basically, the way we initialize this is in the URL, we have to pass the download location, and we have to add our authentication. Now, one thing to remember in this authentication is that when we have to define the authority also, although it's not mandatory from Logic Apps perspective, but for this particular API call, we need to define the authority. So we have a tenant, audience, we define the client ID and the secret. Now, what this will do is basically download the file stream. Now, once we have downloaded the file stream, what we need to do is we need to create a zip file in our blob storage. So what I have done is I have created a outbound container in our Azure Blob Storage. which is at the moment empty. So we will try to save that stream as a zip file in this location. So let's continue. And in order to create the file, we will use the Azure Blob Storage action, and we will use create blob. Here we will define the storage account. So we have created a new connection. I have shown in my previous video how to create a connection. So if you have any doubts here, then you can watch the previous videos. Now in the blob name, let's use the UTC now as the expression, and we call it .zip file. And in the blob content, basically the content is the output from the download the file. So we use this as our content. Now this is where we have created the file. And the last step we need to do with recurring API is we have to send an acknowledgement back to Dynamics that yes, we have received the file. Now, in order to do this acknowledgement, we have to call HTTP post method. And in this HTTP post method, the endpoint we have to call is with the base URL followed by this string with the activity ID. But the body of the response should be the body which we got in the response of our DQ call. So the way to do it is, let's go back to our logic app. We create an HTTP request, and let's say an acknowledgement. Here we do a post call, and the URI is your audience followed by the API connector ACK. And here we have to pass the activity ID, which we sent used here. So we can copy the activity ID. Now, in the body, we need to pass the response we received from the DQ command. So we go to the DQ and we select the body. So we are passing that response as the body of our acknowledgement post call. And then we basically also add our authentication here. Define the security stuff. And let's save the logic app. So that's pretty much how we would like to model the logic app. So let me just quickly summarize here. We have done a DQ call to Dynamics with the activity ID, which we have received from the Dynamics setup of the data management recurring project instance here. After that, we have read the response and we have extracted the download location variable from it. Using that, we have downloaded the location using a get call, and then we have stored that file in our blob storage, and we have sent an acknowledgement back. So let's run it and see it in action. So if we go back to Dynamics and go to manage messages, we can see that this file has actually been acknowledged now. So let's go back and see, yep, it all ran successfully. So we have a DQ command, and if we look at the output, this was the location which we received as download location. And if we go further down, we did parse JSON, and the download location variable got initialized with that particular location. In download the file, we have called the get method, and we have got the successful response. This is the stream. And then we have created a blob storage with the name, which is current UTC date time. And then we have sent an acknowledgement back that yes, we have received the file. So let's look at the blob storage. Let's refresh it. And here is the zip file which we have exported out of Dynamics. So let's download it and open the file to see the contents. So we are expecting the records of our customer group table. So here we can open the CSV file and we can see that we have got the records. Now, another advantage of using data package is that you can export data from multiple entities using one call. So if your data project is configured to have multiple entities, you can basically extract data from multiple tables using one call to Dynamics. So this is how we do the data export from recurring API using recurring API pattern using Logicapps. We can run it again to see it in action. So at this moment, if I refresh, we can see that this file has been downloaded. So it went pretty quickly. It was pretty smooth. So the reason is because the file is already exported from Dynamics and it's kept at that blob storage. So when we are making this call, Dynamics is not actually generating the file. It's just downloading. That's why these calls are pretty quick, but it brings an additional layer of recurrence pattern within finance and operation framework. So with that, thank you guys for watching these videos and do keep sharing your feedback with me, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. See you in